my journey to playing here was not so straightforward. It wasn't like I got a call and Bir Yaakov said, like, Theo, we're going to pay you. We're going to fly you out. Like, we want you tomorrow. Like, no, I was coming out from a D3, which isn't as well known as like these large D1 schools.
Welcome to The Stroll Season 1. I'm your host, Sam Thompson. In this season, I'll work to engage in conversations that dive deep into the intricacies of each guest's unique career, while also bringing to light the reality of how each guest maintains their health in the professional culture they work in. In this episode, I'll be talking to Theo Henry. Theo is from the Philadelphia area, where he was the captain of the boys' varsity basketball team at Lower Merion High School. He was recruited to play and eventually became the captain of the men's basketball team at Tufts, where he majored in computer science. After Tufts, Theo moved to New York City for a year and a half, where he joined Snapchat as a software engineer. Following his stint in New York, Theo moved to Tel Aviv to pursue professional basketball and living abroad, while also continuing his development as a software engineer. If you're enjoying the podcast thus far, please take a moment to subscribe to stay updated and give your support to the podcast. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Theo. So Theo, you recently moved from the US to Israel, more specifically New York to Tel Aviv. I'd like to hear a little bit about that journey and what overall made you take that jump to move there.
Absolutely. If you had asked me a year and a half ago where I'd be today, I definitely would not have said Tel Aviv. So after I graduated from Tufts, I started working at Snapchat and was living in New York City, and I thought everything was great. I was invited to play basketball on the Maccabi USA team in Argentina last January. And it was kind of there that this seed was planted. I had stopped playing basketball competitively after Tufts and was just playing for fun in New York. And now I was playing again competitively, training for something. And it was this combination of like a Jewish experience. And I had some really like key mentors for me who basically showed me that, number one, I'm good enough to play in Israel, and that it would be an incredible culture fit for me. And kind of just opened my eyes to like a little bit more about Judaism that I hadn't really explored. And that trip kind of left me thinking, like, is New York really, really fulfilling for me? Is it the right place right now? And I ultimately decided that I wanted to make this jump to Tel Aviv. I moved here in September. Since then, I signed with a basketball team. I've been learning Hebrew, starting a life here, working, and I haven't regretted it a day since. So that's kind of my journey to get here.
And I'd love to talk a little bit more about your basketball journey in a minute, but in terms of culturally, what are the biggest cultural differences you've noticed between, per se, New York and Tel Aviv?
New York had like an incredible hustle culture, and I felt like I was working surrounded by people who were grinding, trying to make their way to the top, and it was incredibly motivating. And that's like work and professional is really important to me. And I think that in Tel Aviv, I found that I can kind of have the fulfillment side of life as well as the work balance. And I'll give you an example. I think that the people here, and like speaking from personal experience, kind of every day is more valuable. Maybe it's just the nature of the region and living in a land that's a little precarious. But I think people here really just enjoy every day. And you wake up with that meaning, and the people around you share it. I think I feel here the depth of relationships and conversations on a daily basis is much stronger. And I'm not sure what it is, but I just feel more connected to the people here, and that everyday life is just a bit more fulfilling. So I feel like I'm kind of really thriving in a social and a relationship standpoint, and still able to, have a great professional career. But it's just something here is meaningful, and I feel a real sense of connection.
And your career is a little bit maybe more unique to this point and what you're doing currently. I'd love to hear a little bit about what you did after graduation and then how you've tailored that to enable you to pursue this opportunity and live in Israel.
Yeah, definitely. Uh, so at Tufts, I studied computer science and was very involved in some entrepreneurial endeavors. But after school, I decided to take a job at Snapchat, and I was working as a software engineer in New York City. I did that for about a year and a half before I moved to Tel Aviv. When I got here, my priorities shifted a little. I thought that I needed to really like dive into work and hence getting the job at the big company. But I realized I kind of had a little bit more time than I thought. And so I took a step back from that, ultimately decided to leave Snap and instead focused on developing my skills in Hebrew, doing classes here, as well as focusing on my basketball career. So I signed with a team, Maccabi USA in the Israeli Professional League, and decided to take a break from Snap and instead like focus on the professional things at the time a little bit more dear to my heart. So I started picking up personal projects, working on things in the AI space just to like learn, freshen my skills, like tinker again, something I hadn't done so much since college. And now I'm starting a part-time role contracting for a company in the US where I'll be building a lot of their AI applications. And that's going to give me the freedom to pursue my other endeavors. So I'm looking into some entrepreneurial pursuits. But really like that's the kind of where I am professionally is I picked up a new contracting role and hopefully that'll give me some freedom and bandwidth to work on more long-term entrepreneurial pursuits.
That's fascinating. And are you at liberty to share at all about what those current entrepreneurial pursuits are, or?
They're quite early, but there's two ideas I'm looking into, both in the AI space around like applications for enterprise companies. One that would be applicable to like personal employee kind of coaching, like career guidance, and another that's around like enterprise navigation, like how customers get information from their enterprise businesses.
Do you think that your time at Snap has really enabled you to pursue these other pursuits? And then, as you mentioned, work this contracting job? And how did your time at Snap either contribute to that? And what were the key takeaways from your time at Snapchat?
I think Snap has definitely been an enabler for me. I think that for a lot of people coming out of college with entrepreneurial dreams, there's a choice you make whether or not to pursue a traditional role at a company or go straight into entrepreneurship. And I don't necessarily think there's a right answer. I actually think that the earlier you start on your own, the better off you are because you have more chances to fail, to iterate, to try things. But for my case, I'm really happy I went with Snap. And the reason being is that number one, it gave me some confidence that I'm able to perform at a high level in a technical role and learn from some mentors early on, which I do believe is important. I had incredible people around me at Snap, smart, creative, kind, who really I think set me on the right path. And those are relationships and people who will advise me and who I'll talk to, who are friends moving forward. And it has enabled me because during my time at Snap and then since leaving, I've been recruited by other companies, by other people who are looking for talent like myself. And I wouldn't have gotten this new contracting role that I'm really excited about without the Snap name on my resume. And so having that experience is kind of propelling me into the next one. And not only that, I think it'll be quite useful moving forward, just in terms of key takeaways, I think that when you, like, as an entrepreneur, the only thing that you can like build ideas from is your lived experiences. So I think a lot of things that I want to build around, specifically targeting enterprise companies, come from ideas and inefficiencies that I've seen working in places like Snap and like places where I interned. So that's number one. It's just like inspiration. Number two, I think it's well, first and foremost, like the relationships were the most important thing I gained. My managers, my mentors, all those people, incredible. And the other engineers and designers who I worked alongside are people I'm still in contact with, and hopefully I'll be able to work with in the future. And finally, I think you see how a company works, how managers manage, and you take some of those things with you into your next experiences, some things that you want to translate and other things that you'd like to improve upon. So, I mean, overall, I have really great things to say from my year and a half at Snap, and I wouldn't change a thing about the way I did it.
And I'm glad to hear that overall, looking back at the experience, you thought it was very positive and constructive. And one thing I'd like to hear about, given public perception of entrepreneurship, I think at times can be that you have to be all in or not pursue it at all, in terms of this perception that a founder needs to be working 100 hours a week. This has to be their entire life and it has to be do or die for them. Currently in career, it seems like you found an incredible balance of being able to explore a new culture, pursue, I'd say maybe career adjacent basketball, because it doesn't sound like you want to, try to pursue maybe doing that as your sole career. But what is kind of your long-term goal in your career? And do you think that entrepreneurship needs to be something that you're all in on, or do you think that you'll be able to maintain that balance throughout your entrepreneurial endeavors?
It's a great question. And I think time will truly tell. But I think these things come in phases, right? So there's only so many hours you can contribute. And I think that, in terms of being someone that, if you're ultimately leading a company and people are depending on you, maybe you have investors, like, you do need to be all in a sense. Because, if you're at the head of the ship, you're the person people are looking to. And, being all in kind of comes with that. But at the same time, I think these things come in phases, right? So right now, I think I'm in more of an exploratory phase. So I'm working another job part-time. I'm doing some other things on the side, including basketball and studying. And I think that, like, in this sort of early phase where I'm more exploring ideas, like, it comes in sprints. Like, when I have these things that I'm working on that I shared with you earlier, like, when the inspiration hits or when I sit down, like, I'm going at it. I'm not stopping. I'm not taking breaks. I'm completely locked in and getting to a point where I feel really confident in the work I've done, and then I can go back and get some feedback, maybe build something, maybe share with, like, trusted advisors, get feedback. But I think the question of, like, do you have to be all in is it really depends on what you're building, the kind of business. Are you in a harsh competitive landscape? Is your company defensible? Are you growing in a way that that enables you to retain users, or is it just an open market for other people to compete with you? All these things kind of influence how you have to operate and maybe your time investment. One thing that I think has been interesting about, like, my experience in general is I've always done a lot of things in parallel. Like, the way I was raised, my parents never all I wanted to focus on was playing basketball. Then I found other passions outside, but I was always doing a lot of things. And I think that carries over today. Like, I have a diverse set of interests and things that I want to explore. But I think when something takes off, like, if that pull is strong enough, like, it's sometimes hard to fight back, and that's maybe the all in that you're talking about.
Very interesting. And I'd like to now switch to covering a little bit about your basketball journey. So you were the captain of the Tufts men's basketball team. And then after graduating, you were playing in and around New York City. I know you mentioned to me previously you played in the West 4th Street leagues and a bunch of different other leagues as well. And then you had this experience with the USA men's Maccabi team down in Argentina, and then opened your eyes to the possibility of playing professionally in Israel. I'd like to hear a little bit about the differences that you notice between your experience at Tufts basketball and then now your experience with Maccabi Berea Tel Aviv, I believe. And before you dive into that answer, could you just please tell the audience a little bit more about what Maccabi Berea Tel Aviv is, what league you're playing in, and generally anything else that you think might be relevant for context for someone who isn't as familiar with this?
Yeah, of course. So I'm playing for it's Maccabi Bir Yaakov, and it's outside Tel Aviv. Like my journey to playing here was not so straightforward. It wasn't like I got a call and Bir Yaakov said like, Theo, we're gonna pay you, we're gonna fly you out, like we want you tomorrow. Like no, I was coming out from a D3, which isn't as well known as like these large D1 schools, and I had taken a year off in between like college and professionals. That's kind of like a little bit of like a red flag. They're not sure if this guy's going to be invested. So like I came here and I was trying out. It was far from certain whether or not I would have a contract, whether or not I would find a team. Of course, I believed in myself, but it took a few months. Like the season started, and then I was signed by Bir Yaakov, and like after that moment, like I think they would say they're happy with the results, and I would say it's been an incredible fit. But like it definitely hit different seeing my name in Hebrew across the back for the first time, and like putting on that jersey. It was super special. And in my third game, I think at home, we had a home game. We had a great crowd. We had all the kids out. And I went on like this little run where I hit two, like a three, got a steal, like picked the guy's pocket, got a steal, scored a layup, and then hit another three. And like they call a timeout. I'm jumping with my teammates, and I hear like the crowd chanting in like this Israeli accent, like Henry, Henry, Henry. And that's just like, those moments make it super special, and just like sharing those with your teammates. It's really cool. It's such like an incredible addition to my life that I feel like I can, is really a gift. There's 3 professional leagues in Israel: Liga Aleph, Liga Lumit, and Liga Artzit. I'm playing in the Liga Artzit, which is the 3rd division here in Israel. And the reason I like pursued this division as opposed to the Liga Lumit is that it's actually less of a time commitment than college basketball was. And so I'm able to, go after my professional endeavors like in parallel with the basketball, which is important to me at this stage because, like you said, I gave up my NBA dreams a few years ago. I'd say college basketball is a real grind at any level. I think it's, balancing that along with your coursework is really serious. You're usually at the facility 4 or 5 hours a day, traveling every weekend for games. But I thought at the D3 level, I was able to balance that with academics quite well, have a decent social life. The balance I kind of mentioned earlier. It's also really intense at that age because, you're 18 to 22 years old, and you're really, these coaches are really like your the player coach relationship is like, it's different. You're unpaid, and these coaches are like, they're really in charge of you. Uh, they give you trust, but like, it's a lot of responsibility, and a lot that is expected of you being a part of that team. I think that like the relationship is really different in the professionals, because now you're being paid, you're trusted with your kind of whole life outside of sports. And you're already like, you've grown into a different role already. You've maybe gone through college, or in the case of Israelis, you've probably gone through the army. Like, you're a man at this point. And, the coaches aren't so much like, it's more of a peer-to-peer relationship, especially with the player on the team could be making as much as a coach. That just changes the dynamics. But, with Maccabi Yaakov, we're practicing 3 to 4 times a week, one game a week. And typical with like European basketball, the season is really long. So you're playing from like September through May. It's a really long season. It's more of a marathon than a college basketball season, which is like squeezing in maybe 30 games, then playoffs. Like, this is a lot different. It's a longer season. A lot changes. The team changes. When I signed with this team, they had recently dropped players, and they signed me and some other teammates now. And it's more fluid. It's more dynamic. And it's been incredible. Like, just playing at a professional level, like the competition level's really high. It's special playing in a new country and a new style of basketball.
How are the crowds? Are the turnouts? I've heard a lot about the culture of European basketball games. The crowds will almost be like a very intense U.S. high school game where they're chirping, they're getting after the players, there's chants and so on and so forth. Have you found that the crowd atmosphere there is as strong?
Yeah, I think the crowds are special. It's I'd say more intense than like my college games, even if like the attendance might be similar. But they're banging drums. All the kids in our youth programs are out there. They're singing, they're chanting, they're lighting fireworks, they're throwing things on the court, they're cursing out the refs. Like, it's honestly like mayhem sometimes, but it makes playing at a home game pretty fun, and can make away games interesting. But I love it. It's just it's a whole added piece that I hadn't really even thought about coming in, but it's been a treat.
And I think one major difference between US basketball and overseas basketball that's interesting, and that you touched upon there, is that all these teams will have youth programs. Can you dive into a little bit about how that system works? And do programs that have youth teams typically groom those players to play for their professional teams, or how does that work when it's maybe a little bit more professionalized from such a young age?
It's interesting. I think it's something that the programs in the States could learn from. We have at Bir Yaakov, we have starting maybe at 8 years old, the youth teams start, and there's usually like a good size pool of kids. So there's maybe 3 teams, 3 levels, and as they move up, if some kids are improving, they're moving up and down between teams. And it just creates like a really strong community in each city. So each city has their, youth basketball program, youth soccer program, things like this. And it totally grooms the players. They're all playing together from a young age. So, players from our team have been playing together since they were 10 years old, which is super special. And my team we have like 1 or 2 that are, 18, 19 years old, who kind of are in the development phase, but also play with us for the practice, all the way up to, I think our oldest player is 37. Such a range, and really an incredible opportunity to like learn from people with experience. And I think that the youth program does a great job of that, and something that I would be looking at from like the US and saying, we need more of this. If you're building up for your high school or colleges, to like groom those at a younger age.
As you were talking about that, something that came across my mind is our experience with the Maccabi U18 team in Mexico City. And in talking to
Yes.
you over the years, I knew you were also interested in potentially playing professional basketball in South America. Was there something that pushed you either towards Israel or away from South America? And how did you go about that decision?
As a Spanish speaker, that was appealing. But after my experience in Argentina, I stayed a few weeks and I played with the Boca Juniors team. They have an incredible soccer team, an incredible basketball team, fans that are just, it's pandemonium. Uh, and I thought, man, I could play here and I could totally see myself in Argentina. But ultimately, I had some friends who helped me with like the recruiting process, helped me find an agent. And my agent said, you know, those are options you'd have down the line, but Israel is probably the best place to start, giving that you're Jewish, you can get an Israeli passport, and that makes a lot of the process easier. Um, so from that standpoint, it made the most sense to start in Israel. And also, when I took in all the life factors, I thought this would be the best fit too. So that's really what it came down to.
In making this transition from D3 basketball, being the captain of the men's team, to then taking a pause in, I'll say, professional basketball, now to playing in Israel, how have you found that your preparation towards games, either nutrition, training outside of your basketball responsibilities, lifting weights, has either shifted or changed? And what did you learn from your D3 experience that you've now taken into this professional setting?
Think that in terms of the way I prepare and play, um, I don't know, Tufts had a lot to do with like how I form my identity as a player. So I always took a lot of pride on defense, and like I want to make sure that every time I step on the floor, I feel like I've done like everything I can to prepare and put me in the best position to succeed. Because ultimately, if I'm at the free throw line at the end of the game, or someone kicks it out to me for a game-winning three, or I have to guard the best player on the other team when they're trying to win the game on the last possession, like if I haven't done everything in my power to give myself the best chance of success, then I'm letting the team down. I'm letting myself down. So I think over the course of my whole career, that's been something I've been developing. And, you know, during college, I honed in on how I like to lift weights, how I take care of my body, how I recover, how I train. So I feel like I have that stuff like really down well at this point.
And what is your
But the
approach there? Are you working out 2, 3 times a week and then you're hooping, I don't know, 3, 4 times a week with the team? Maybe break it down for me about, how you spend your week and how you spend your, I'd say, physical capacity in a given week.
during the season, I'm playing with the team 4 days a week. I'm shooting on my own separately 2 days a week, and I'm lifting weights 3 days a week, doing something every day. So sometimes I'll be doing 2 a days. I got into yoga when I was in high school, and that's been like a key part of my recovery and just like taking care of my body. So I try to like incorporate that before every workout, and then like a dedicated session every week. And, that's usually how I train. And then outside the season, I'm like really consistent as well. I'd say even during the break from between Tufts and Israel, I was still like kind of training this way. And my friends were asking me like, why are you training so hard? Like, what are you doing? And it's kind of ingrained in me at this point. So that's kind of my routine now.
It's incredibly healthy. I mean, exercise is the number one medicine we have in terms of longevity and promoting lifespan and health span. I don't know at what point it becomes you're exercising too much to the point where you could be putting yourself at risk of overuse, but I'd probably err on the side to say that you are not near that point and that you're taking your recovery and rest serious enough to help promote or avoid getting injured. And I'm curious how you approach sleep. Do you take any off days during the week? How are you preparing the day or two before a game? And how does that differ when you know you're about to have a pretty physical bout? Because I've also heard the Israeli league is a very physical league, perhaps a lot more than maybe D3 or even potentially D1 basketball.
Yeah, I think I take all this stuff quite seriously, and a lot of lessons I've learned over time. So you mentioned overuse. Like I really started training hard, probably like eighth grade, ninth grade, when I wanted to make my varsity basketball team, and train like a maniac until I ultimately got injured. Like I had a stress fracture that made me miss a year of high school basketball and almost prevented me from, ultimately getting recruited, and impacted that whole sort of journey. Without that injury, I don't know if I would have ended up at Tufts or somewhere else, but like I learned from that experience how to train, how to stay in tune with my body. So now I'm a lot more cognizant of that. And when I'm preparing for a game, it's actually a really nice rhythm here, because every Friday, like the weekend here is Friday, Saturday. It's over Shabbat, which is a Saturday. And that's like a kind of a day of rest. So on Saturdays, I'll take it easy. I'll just do a shooting session, usually no more than 30 minutes, as well as like a stretch, warm up, just feeling good, but light on the legs. Friday we have practice, and I'll get in a lift before practice. So I'll go pretty hard Friday, but Saturday is, light, take it easy on the legs, get shots up that night, make sure I'm getting a great night's sleep. Sunday's game day in the evening. I'll wake up, get shots up, rest the rest of the day. A few hours before the game, I'm going to try to get in like a 90-minute to a 2-hour nap, and then head off to the game. And, I have a warm-up routine before the game, before our warm-ups. And then, for tip off, I'm ready to go.
How are you approaching nutrition?
Yeah, I take nutrition really seriously. I pretty much cook all my meals, and just eat a very like solid balance of protein, vegetables, and starches. I eat a lot of chicken, a lot of sweet potatoes, and a lot of salads, and a ton of fruit. The food here in Israel is excellent, super fresh. So I'm always my go-to is like bananas and oranges before games. I'll usually have like a nice big lunch, like probably before I nap, consisting of like a pretty good salad and chicken and sweet potatoes, just so I have like a bunch of energy ready to go before the game. But yeah, I'm cooking, and I just like to control kind of what I'm eating. I feel best this way.
How is the food scene, I guess, outside of you cooking, restaurants in Israel? I've heard in Tel Aviv, the nightlife is incredible. How would you say that compares to New York? And if there is any sort of difference in mindset that you see between people going out in New York and Tel Aviv, how does that compare?
Definitely is a difference. Well, you asked about the food scene first. I think, yeah, restaurants here are terrific. And in general, like the food it's really good, healthy, light. But you'll also have like big, like oily, meaty kind of dishes like shawarma and like nice big hummus and stuff like that. So you'll get a big mix, but I'd say in general, like you're going to restaurants and there's a lot of like healthy and delicious options. And I think in terms of like the going out scene here, I think it sort of sits at the end of like two extremes, and New York's kind of more in the middle. Like here, there's sort of two sides to it. Like I'd say the more low-key end of it is friends and people are always meeting up just for coffee or drinks casually and like sitting out in groups of friends. And a lot of the nightlife scene is just, kind of bars, restaurants, outdoor tables, and you're just, hanging in groups of friends, people, and just sitting. And that's a lot more of like the chill scene. Whereas like New York, I felt like was bars. It's a lot more crowded, usually standing up, talking to people, which also has its charm, but it's just a difference. So the bar scene here is quite different. And then, New York has its clubbing scene. Tel Aviv has a huge clubbing scene too. And parties can go well into the morning, and there's always an after party. It's definitely doesn't need to stop, and especially in the real summer months, it's the city can be a party for sure.
And how have you found either the difficulty or feasibility of maintaining relationships with your family, your friends, and everybody in New York, or back home in Philly as you've been overseas?
It's funny you should mention that. I, one thing that I'm really trying to do, especially in this new year, is like recognize that there's a lot of people back home who care about me, who are thinking about like how's Theo, and these people in your life who might not always reach out, just a conscious effort to like share more, like really what's going on in my life, keep people updated, send them notes, and just go a little deeper with that. But it's definitely been more of a challenge. When I was living in New York, I had my parents pretty close by, my brothers, my grandmother, a bunch of friends. So I was lucky enough to have some of my immediate family visit in December. That was super special. I'm figuring out how it really is to live across the world from the people you love, and at the same time learning, like I think like this is a stage that's really like about me and my personal growth, and so I have to explore if this is like something I'm able to do. Live far away from them and getting that experience. And I think for now, like all those relationships have remained close and in frequent contact with the family, so it's all good.
Reflecting on our conversation so far, and what people who might listen to this also might say, is a lot of your extracurricular activities do seem like there is a physical health element to them. So you obviously have your career, but then you're playing basketball professionally, and then you also like to exercise in your own outside of that. Are there any other hobbies or pursuits you have, let's also put entrepreneurship aside here, that aren't more physically inclined, and that if you just said, hey, I want to sit on the couch or do something that isn't going to get my heart rate going, what are those pursuits that you might have?
Music's a pretty big passion of mine. So I started playing guitar a few years ago, and it's just like opened up something just a different side for me. So I play a lot of music. I'm getting more into like writing music in general. I also just enjoy writing. And man, if we're gonna sit on the couch, Gus, like I know you're a Settlers of Catan guy, but like any game you get me going. We play a ton of we call it shesh besh or backgammon. Any board game I'm there for. I'm a competitor.
Yeah, I remember, I think 3 summers ago now, when I came over to you and your family's house, there's some pretty epic backgammon games going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And when you get the gambling dice involved as well, then it gets pretty intense. And maybe one thing to dive a little bit deeper on, I think overall the tone of this conversation so far has been overwhelmingly positive, but I'd love to hear about what are some of the more difficult things that you've experienced in moving overseas, because it obviously must have been a lot of stressors, a lot of difficulties with that process. What are some of the, I think, biggest challenges that you've had to deal with? I know you're currently investing a lot of time into learning Hebrew, and that certainly can't be easy, but what are some of the challenges that you've experienced as you made this transition?
I think I've been fortunate in this move to have a bunch of sort of landing pads. Like I think some people come here and are thrown into the deep end. Like every day, people are making this move to Israel, and I meet new immigrants all the time who are just throwing themselves into the deep end. I think I was lucky because I came here with a job at Snapchat with an agent who was trying to place me on a basketball team, and with a few people I knew. And like between those, it made it a lot easier. But I will say it's challenging when you're in a new city and you don't know people. And whether or not like how extroverted you are, like, especially those first weeks, like there was a lot of just, going out and meeting people and just trying to find like some connection and, reaching out to people I barely knew and seeing, what are you doing? You have plans for dinner? What are you doing on Friday? Things like that. Like, it's just a lot of, uh, trying to find yourself in a community early on is definitely a challenge. Um, and so, there's times it can be lonely and but, you do your best through that and, time makes all that easier. So I think something else that's like really special here, um, is just like the culture around Shabbat. So for those that don't know, like every Friday into Saturday is a holiday. From sundown Friday to sundown Saturday is Shabbat, and it's kind of this Jewish day of rest. And like culturally, it's a time when families come together, when you eat, when you drink, when you catch up from the week, and just like really share something special. And so, like, this isn't something that was like close to my heart in when I was living in New York. At most, if I was with my family, we'd light candles, but there was no times I had like a Shabbat dinner party or was like having like a cultural experience. So, when I got here, I have a dear friend here who's hosted me many times. Shout out to my boy Jonathan Carton. And he hosted a really special Shabbat here, and it was kind of picturesque. It was like all these young and excited people sitting around a table, just like brimming with energy, who are either from Israel or recently moved here, and just like so much excitement and stories to share and love for this place, and like everyone sharing kind of their story, their journey, how they got here. Um, and I just felt like I was in a place where I was, surrounded by people with kind of similar aspirations and views and like guiding principles. And we just had an incredible night of like dinner, conversation, dancing, and um, you know, that kind of thing. I think is like the essence of Israeli culture and family and relationships and meaning. And that's something I look forward to participating in and sharing for a long time to come.
It's a really beautiful element of the Jewish culture, the concept of Shabbat. I worked with somebody who is now a good friend of mine, who, after becoming good friends at work, he said, "Hey, you should come over for Shabbat." And I went over there. And one thing I noticed too is that he is very religious. So from sundown on Friday to sundown on Saturday, he uses no electronics. His phone is away. He's really present, living in that moment right there. And one thing that I thought was so special about my experience and him inviting me over, I'll also give him a shout out. That's Evan Glick. Thank you for welcoming me into your home, Evan. But
Shout out Evan, thanks,
yeah.
boy.
But he had so many people over to his place. He is my age, 23 years old, having 15 or 16 people over for dinner with his wife, and just how welcomed I felt in that moment was something very special. And then connecting with people that I didn't know very well over this shared holiday. And I don't even think everybody there was Jewish, although a majority were, but just kind of the openness and welcoming of people welcoming me into their home and inviting me to celebrate this occasion with them was very special. And it really did make me feel like a member of a larger community of people that do celebrate this holiday each and every week.
Yeah, I think like you just kind of hit it there. It's especially like young people, like college is such a time when you have that friend group, you have that community, and then like you go off to a big city and often like lose that. So many people searching for that. And I think one thing I found here is just you asked me what's like about Israel, like everyone is so welcoming because like for someone like me to move here, they see it as like a huge thing and are like welcome me with open arms. And I feel that every day, every time I meet people, that it's just this welcoming energy. And it's shown me that like when I come back to the States to visit, it's like something I really hope to bring and like foster. And uh it's just something that I think people would be a lot more happy with it with their lives if we could have a little bit more of that welcoming energy. And um Gus, I hope you take that experience with you and like do something with it, honestly, because it's special, and it's something that was missing for me in New York that like I only realize now.
Living alone in Israel, or were you able to find a roommate?
That's been interesting too. I've bounced around. I think in 4 months I've had like 4 apartments, and
Wow.
some with roommates, some without, one with a dog.
Break that down for me. How are you going through 4 different apartments in 4 months? Are
I
you
guess you
signing
have it.
leases and then they're falling through? Is it short term where you can get in and out whenever you want? How does that
Yeah,
actually work?
the apartment scene is like funny here. Like, I mean, in New York, you're coordinating with your roommates, you're finding a spot, you're signing a lease for a year. Like here, it's like people posting on Facebook, like, who wants to join me for like, who wants this sublet of like 3 days, or who wants this sublet of a year or 1 month? Like,
Wow.
there's always just spaces opening up. So first I had an Airbnb when I got here, and then I saw on Facebook people had like a long term or had like a month sublet. I'm sorry. So I joined 2 Israelis in their apartment for a month. And then kind of a crazy story, that lease was running out. I hadn't found anything. I went to a dinner and some guys like, yeah, I kind of have this studio that I let friends stay at. And it's cool. If you ever need his place, like you're welcome to it. Like, yeah, I'm kind of in the market. So that ended up being like 2 months. And then I decided to get out of there. Saw someone posted in like a WhatsApp group that their sister was leaving, and now I'm living with this nice woman, and it's the two of us, and will be like 1 month, maybe turn into two, and I'm looking for the right place now
Hmm.
to sign a long-term lease, but like that gives you a sense of how that's working.
And you say long-term lease. Since moving to Israel, have you become more inclined to stay there in the long term? And how is your approach to figuring out if this is going to be a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, or perhaps even permanent stint?
Yeah, I mean, I think my experience here has been overwhelmingly positive. Like I kind of have all these elements of my life that are adding up to something like very special. And not only that, I feel really connected to just like the land, to this place, to this country. Um, but I said to myself, like, I'm going to come here with an open mind. I think my itch to maybe travel, to live abroad, was something that had developed like long before I moved here, like probably kind of during college. And so, like when I came here, I said, I'm going to invest in my life here and have an open mind and see where it takes me. Hence, like why I'm studying Hebrew 20 hours a week and going to classes, and like I'm really trying to dive deep into the culture and like plant roots here and build a life here and give this place a chance to really be something special for me. And so, I don't have an answer as to like how long this might be or if it will be forever, but I'm open to all opportunities. And that's sort of the approach that has been worked for me. I've really enjoyed it so far.
Interesting. And is there one maybe smaller element of life that you miss most back home about the States? Whether it's maybe your favorite cheesesteak in Philly, favorite slice of pizza in New York, a certain location in New York or Philly, What's one thing that if you could, come back to the States for an hour and you weren't allowed to see anybody, but just do something for you, what would that be?
I can't see anyone.
Yeah.
Ah, I mean, look, it's definitely the friends and the family. But if I had an hour in the States, mm, it's a great question. I'm probably stopping by like Pete's Tavern for like a beer and a burger in New York. That was kind of my spot
Mm.
when I lived there. Um, God, I moved out of Philly when I was like 18, but a cheesesteak would hit crazy.
Do you know
Um,
Angelo's in Philly? Is that a spot
yeah,
that,
have you been?
yeah, I spent a weekend in Philly with a few buddies,
Oh
maybe
yeah,
5 or 6 months ago,
right.
and that cheesesteak was not even in the same league of any other cheesesteak I've had in my life. That was an experience in of itself, and we even sometimes talk about even just doing a day trip back to Philly just to get Angelo's.
Yeah, 100%. Ooh, also, man, the chocolate chip cookies at Levain's in New York,
Mm.
insane. A walk in Central Park, like that's one of my favorite places in the world. Um, but yeah, like people don't understand the value of a great cheesesteak.
Oh yeah,
I'm
it's
glad you got
heavy.
that Philly trip in.
It's heavy. I'll say it's not something
Yeah,
that I think I could eat every week even, but once a month, crushing a massive Angelo's cheesesteak, that would add some value to my life probably.
yeah, you're only 2 hours away, Gus.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to touch on is our experience in Mexico City together as part of the Maccabi U18 team or USA Maccabi U18 team. And we actually got ourselves into a little bit of a precarious situation before the gold medal game. Uh, do you want to tell that story and then I could chip in as well?
So Gus and I met back in 2019. He was, we're both 18 years old, coming out of high school. Gus is getting ready to go off to Yale. I'm heading off to Tufts, and we're both invited to play on this Maccabi USA basketball team in Mexico City. I think so many of my relationships and experiences have come through sports, and like it shows me like the two of us would never have met, but we just said yes to this experience, and uh, you know, and here we are years later talking about it. But for like 2-3 weeks, Gus and I and our team were playing against Argentina, Brazil, and so we're out exploring Mexico City, and we're having the time of our lives, and we're doing things teams do often. Gus, you like to freestyle?
Not anymore, but we were keen on it back then.
Yeah. Well, I still like to freestyle. Um, but we were having fun, we were messing around. So the night before the gold medal game, we say like, let's actually write and record a rap. And after we win the medal, we're gonna be on the bus ride back to our place, whatever. We're celebrating. We're gonna play the song for the team. So, the night before our game, talking, you asked me about preparation. Like, this is not how I prepare today. We stay up till like 3 writing and recording this rap, right? And the rap was great. Like, you're going to play it after this. And then, next day the game comes around.
I just remember having an overwhelming sense of confidence based on the league match play. I think we won most games by 20 or 30, that
Yep.
we would be able to take care of business. We had a really deep team as well. I think 1 through 10, everybody could play. And I think it was 2 halves at that point. And I remember early on in the game, we were playing the Israel team, and they were just hitting shots that you'd see go up. You'd think, no way that's going in, and they were falling. And I think to start off the game, we found ourselves like down maybe 5, 6, 7 points. It was kind of like toe and toe around halftime. We were down maybe 1 or 2. And I remember what was going through my mind was, holy shit. Like this would be just like the ultimate like walk away in shame if we didn't get this done. And I think you gave me a little bit of a look too as well, like the halftime huddle, like it's time to fucking walk the walk. We've certainly talked plenty of
Exactly.
talk.
Yeah, I just remember like we're down at halftime against this team we beat in the earlier play, and I remember giving you this look like dude, we gotta go. And like, I like actually made a conscious effort, like, all right, turn it on and like let's get this done. And like we blew it open in the second half. We're celebrating, water party, like all the guys are excited, like it was, picturesque. And then, just as we planned, like we pull out that speaker, we play it for the team, and they just went bananas for it.
Yeah, and I remember our coaches, Lee Jaffe and Josh Javer, I think they, after we played it, came and said exactly what we were thinking at halftime. Like, wow, you guys really, put yourselves in a position, like a must-win position with that one. But I also think they found the humor in it, and they overall enjoyed seeing us form such close relationships and just the team having such a great time in our experience there.
This will be my my first song release when you play this on the pod.
Wow, this is my first song release as well, actually. So
congrats on the debut.
Yeah, thank you. You too. When inevitably this podcast falls apart, but our music career together takes off, this will be a nice thing to look back on and inadvertently set our music careers off on the right track.
Shout out Salvador.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Stroll. If you like this episode and would like to be in the loop for future episodes while also supporting the podcast, please subscribe here and follow the podcast on social media for updates. The podcast is active across all major social media platforms, including YouTube, and our handles are either The Stroll_podcast or The Stroll_pod. Thank you again to Theo for coming on the podcast and being willing to talk with me about his career thus far and his experience in Israel. I'd also like to take a moment to thank BB Thompson, Saul Thompson, and Liz Jarecki for their support in bringing this podcast to where it is today. Lastly, thank you again for listening. Much love, one love.
Yeah, we just won gold. Dreamed about this since I was 8 years old. Yeah, and I'm feeling really bold. Ice in the veins, we was really cold. And we was shooting well. Hoop was dripping, we was wet as hell. Yeah. We said I couldn't rap, now go around your neck, no cap.
Take a step back, 2 weeks ago, we didn't know the bros. Now we really close, don't forget Nipsey, let's have a toast. Check 1, 2, brotherhood of Jews, love all y'all, in the game of ball, time to say adios. All our glory to Dios.